your first and last name, and obviously tell us your title if you're officer, if you're sergeant or whatever.
Sargent Andy Swoyer, Swoyer.
Okay. So just start off, talk to us about like what is the whole purpose of this specific like pedestrian event and like focus on pedestrian safety today.
Well, this week we're doing pedestrian enforcement, particularly along North 5th Street Highway. I can tell you over the last 4 or 5 years we've had about 7 fatalities involving pedestrians along the highway. With the increase in sidewalks along 5th Street, it's very walkable. There's a lot of crosswalks, designated crossing areas at intersections. We have several bus drop-offs, people coming and going, or coming to work, shopping. It's not uncommon to see people crossing 5th Street Highway to go from one shopping complex to another. So we're out here to, bring awareness for pedestrian safety and to enforce the pedestrians crossing against. Don't cut this out, right? Okay.
Start over with that.
You're looking for driver and pedestrian violations.
That's what I was trying to remember. Yes.
Yeah, that's what you
We're concentrating on driver and pedestrian violations, both at crosswalks at intersections and illegally crossing in the middle of mid-blocks.
Okay, so real quick, when you look in our direction, don't look at Jace with the camera.
Okay.
Just look at me or the other people, but just ignore Jace entirely.
Okay. I can do that.
I know, that's so rude. It sounds so rude. The other thing is, so kind of just summarize again what he was talking about, how you got funding from PennDOT. This is something that in Berks, there's 3 different areas that are a focus. Go ahead and talk to me a little bit about that.
Okay, we received funding through PennDOT. I believe we were one of 3 municipalities in Berks County, along with the City of Reading and West Reading Borough, to enforce pedestrian traffic. Probably because of the number of fatalities that we've had involving pedestrians over the last several years.
Talk to me about, what are some of when you investigate these accidents that turn into fatalities with pedestrians, or even just accidents where pedestrians are hit? Talk to me about some of the factors, like what is this? Is it drivers not paying attention? Is it people crossing in weird places? Like what are you noticing?
Yeah, I believe that it was probably a combination of all those factors. People on cell phones not paying attention, aggressive driving, speeding through intersections, trying to catch that yellow light before it turns red. But we also see a lot of people crossing mid-block to go from one shopping complex to another, and it can be very dangerous. And we've had pedestrian-involved accidents all throughout the day, several at nighttime. There are other factors that play into it, whether they're running out into the street, dark-colored clothing. It's very dangerous, and we do get, this is why we enforce aggressive driving along 5th Street as well, because we do get high speeds coming up and down, and people speeding to get through the intersections.
So is that what the funding from PennDOT is for, to try to amp up enforcement or patrols?
Yes, the funding mainly goes towards patrolling and enforcing the pedestrian traffic, and also vehicles not yielding to pedestrians and basically ignoring that they're crossing the street in front of them.
So is there confusion about crosswalks? What the driver's responsibility is when a pedestrian is crossing, especially in a crosswalk? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, most of the crosswalks are at intersections, so there should be proper signage for when the pedestrian should cross or not. I would say that when involving the actual driver of a vehicle, violating something would be if somebody's crossing, I'll use 5th Street and Madison Avenue, somebody's crossing from west to east, and somebody's pulling out of Madison Avenue onto 5th Street. There is a no turn on red sign. They're making that right turn against the sign, and people could be crossing the street right there.
Mm-hmm. What about and I don't know if this is relevant in your township, but what about mid-block crosswalks? I've seen them, and that would be a source of confusion because there aren't signals for the pedestrians.
Yeah, we have one in particular which crosses in the 4800 block of Fifth Street Highway. It crosses between the areas of where Klein's Motel would be and the Turkey Hill at 5th and Euclid Avenue. There is a designated crosswalk in the street, and there's also a flashing signal for pedestrians to hit the button to cross the street.
Can you tell us why that was put there?
Yeah, several years ago we did have a fatal accident involving a teenager who was crossing from Klein's Motel over to the Turkey Hill, and unfortunately he did die in that crash.
Can you tell me a little bit what you've learned from accidents like that? If you've changed any how you go out in the community and enforce that, or
in the last several years, the township has improved the sidewalks and the crosswalks throughout Fifth Street Highway, and it made it actually very walkable, especially around the shopping complexes. So it does make it easy to come out here, walk from one shopping complex to another, and cross Fifth Street Highway to get from one complex to another.
And the added enforcement you guys are doing just in regards to pedestrian safety and the drivers, that's obviously not just today for us to see, like, is that going to be like a continual, like, we have somebody designated to do this, or like?
Well, yes, I mean, we are aggressive with enforcing traffic laws, and this obviously gives awareness to pedestrian safety as well, and especially in we've had a fair amount of pedestrian involved accidents through the years, so there's definitely need for it.
More in recent years, because you gave numbers of the last 4 or 5 years. I can't remember if you said 7 or 8 accidents or 7 or 8 fatalities. I'll look back when I see it, but has it gotten a lot more in recent years? Is that why you're using?
It does seem to be increasing, and that could be distracted drivers for various reasons, but I would definitely say one of the reasons would be texting and cell phone use.
Good?
Yep.
I think we're done. Unless you want to add anything.
Cut out where I stutter.
No, you're fine. Do you want to talk specifically about the funding? How much is it? Where did it come from? Anyone want?
That's his grant.
Either of you guys?
We got $1,450.
I could talk about the fact that we're seeing an uptick in
Yeah.
pedestrian crashes and bicycle crashes, and the federal government was funding this specifically. This actually comes from federal dollars.
Through PennDOT.
Why don't we do that?
So we could talk about that.
We'll switch up the background for you.
Okay.
I like to have, 2 different people if possible.
And I want to mention that the responsibility lies on both drivers and pedestrians to cross at appropriate places and to know
the
that they need to
township.
stop. Drivers need to stop at crosswalks when pedestrians are.
Right, once they've established themselves, is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay, so
So people don't realize, they don't understand the pedestrian laws.
No, and then they just get irritated. Yes.
His name's Conrad.
So am I on the right? No, I need to be on that side.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, I don't want to stand in front of you.
Hope the bugs aren't flying too bad.
And just let me know when you're ready, Jace.
Good to go.
Okay, so just look at me, say and spell your first and last name, tell me your title.
Tara DeStefano, Taradestefano. I am the Community Traffic Safety Project Coordinator with the Highway Safety Network.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
It's a mouthful.
It sure is. So you said there were specific things that you wanted to talk about. So go ahead and talk about some of those. You said the responsibility is not just with one or the other.
Right, so with pedestrian safety, the responsibility lies with both the pedestrian and the driver. Pedestrians have to realize that they must cross at crosswalks to be safe. By law, if the pedestrian is not crossing at the crosswalk, the driver doesn't need to stop for them. But by law, if they are in the crosswalk, the driver must stop for them in that crosswalk. And that means if they are stepping into the crosswalk, the driver should be aware that they are intending to cross the street and they need to be stopping. Again, the drivers have to understand that pedestrians in crosswalks are essentially a stop signal for them. So it doesn't matter if it is a crosswalk that is mid-block, if it's signaled. if it is marked or unmarked. We have to understand as drivers and pedestrians that crosswalks are any street corner to street corner. So it doesn't need to be lined, it does not need to be electronically signaled. Any street corner to street corner signifies a crosswalk. So a pedestrian crossing in that crosswalk, by law, a driver must stop for them.
You said the funding was, this is like a national.
So what has happened in recent years, we were seeing an uptick in fatalities with pedestrians and bicyclists. And the funding is actually specific for this and comes from the federal government and is specific for pedestrian enforcement. I believe that Pennsylvania had 15% of their fatalities in the past 2 years were bicycle and pedestrian fatalities, and that's where we qualified for this additional funding.
So in Berks County, that additional funding went to Muhlenberg, Reading, and West Reading.
Correct.
Okay. What else? Anything?
That's pretty much they're my pedestrian safety messages. I could mention about this was School Bus Safety Week, and we want to be watching for children that get off the school buses, our pedestrians there. Again, the responsibility lies in both the pedestrian and the driver, so parents need to talk to their school children about how they should behave when they get off the bus, and drivers should be aware if they come upon a school bus that children will be pedestrians as they get off and on the school bus, so they need to be stopping the appropriate distance from the school bus, which is at least 10 feet.
I think that's good, unless you guys want to.
Fine.
Okay,
Basically
perfect.
covered it.
Thank you.
Okay.